Cheating in sports, unfortunately, has been a reality for as long as competitive sports have existed. From athletes in ancient Greece using substances to try and enhance their performances, to one of the earliest recorded instances of substance use in a running event that occurred in the 1904 Olympic marathon. Thomas Hicks, the winner of that marathon, was administered strychnine, a common stimulant at the time, by his trainers during the race. The truth of this uncomfortable topic is there is a lot we can learn from those breaking the rules to try and win at all costs. In this video, we are going to reveal the doping secrets every runner should learn. We are definitely not saying you should take illegal substances, but we will be looking at the 3 common drugs dopers use, why they are taking them, and how you can get the same benefits from your training and racing by legal means while staying within the rules of the sport. Before we get into the 3 types of drugs, when we are talking doping, Lindsey, what are we speaking about specifically?
Doping in sport refers specifically to prohibited substances and methods that give the competitor an unfair advantage. This is controlled through dope control tests that the authorities will take out from time to time to detect if you have illegal substances in your body or have used illegal methods such as blood doping during competition. The penalty for being caught doping range from disqualifications to short and longer term bans depending on the substance that you have been caught using. There are 3 main things that are considered before a product or method will become classified as doping, and you need to satisfy 2 of those 3 things. The first is, does that substance or method constitute an unfair advantage or give you an advantage that others would unlikely be able to have? Number 2, does the use of that substance or method pose a risk to the athlete through its use? And number 3, does the use of that substance or method run against the ethics of the sport?
Lindsey, that's good to know. But before we dive into what we can learn from dopers, what are the dangers of doping and why have these anti-doping methods been put in place in the first place?
While there are many performance advantages to taking banned substances, there are also many risks and unpleasant side effects associated with doping. These range from stinky sweat, acne, having trouble sleeping, mood swings, damage to cardiac muscle or the heart, hormonal changes and imbalances, and as well as a range of psychological impacts that you get from doping.
Oh wow, there's quite a lot there. Now, there are a lot of substances that athletes take to enhance their performance, but what are the 3 common categories of drugs that dopers use, and should I be taking them?
Essentially, there are 3 main classes of drugs that dopers use. The first are anabolic. These are drugs which build. They will incorporate things like anabolic steroids as well as growth hormone. They stimulate the repair and growth and improvement of muscle strength, recovery, make you stronger, make you faster, all the things that athletes are looking for in performance. The second class are the drugs that improve your endurance or on-field performance, things like EPO that boost the oxygen carrying capacity of your blood so that you can have more oxygen available to do more work in any given time. And the third are stimulants. Stimulants essentially improve our arousal. They keep you in the moment. They allow you to concentrate harder. They suppress feelings of fatigue and discomfort, allowing you to push yourself that little bit harder on race day. So those essentially are your 3 main categories of drugs, and there are many, many drugs that fall into those examples, and that is why the WADA lists literally range for pages and pages and pages.
Okay, so now that we know what they're taking, and it really does seem like quite a lot, I guess the $1 million question is, how can we get the same effect in our training? But before we can answer that, it's probably important to know what these drugs do within our body.
Yeah, so Dev, maybe let me unpack a little bit further what's physically happening when we are using the drugs. So as I said, with anabolic, that means to build or repair. So the anabolic are the class of drugs that people would use to both make themselves stronger, but also to help them recover faster. And those are drugs like steroids that actively improve your body's ability to strengthen, but very importantly, to quickly repair and break down inflammation. And a corticosteroid might be a good example of that kind of drug. In terms of the drugs that are used to improve performance from an endurance perspective, like EPO and or methods like blood doping, where we actually physically introduce red blood cells into your blood, or EPO, which creates extra red blood cells in your blood, those are there to actively increase your body's ability to do work at that moment. So if we've got more blood or more red blood cells, that means we can take more oxygen out of the air. It means we can deliver more oxygen to the working muscles where they need it. It means we can perform much more efficiently at a much higher work rate for a much longer period of time. And then finally, we've got stimulants. And the most commonly used stimulant, which does happen to be legal, is caffeine. It increases your arousal. It makes us more alert, more aware. It allows us to concentrate harder, suppress pain, and to make better decisions while we are going. There is also a spin-off of stimulants, and that's that a lot of them are also diuretics, which is a separate class of drug that, while on their own are not necessarily performance enhancing, are used to mask drug use. And so there are many diuretics that are also on the banned list, because when people take banned substances along with diuretics, it reduces the amount of time that the banned substances are in our bodies, and therefore limits the amount of time that we can be caught using those substances.
Okay, so now we're at the crux of why dope is dope, and that's to improve their performance. So what can we do to get the same effect without taking the drugs?
So testosterone and growth hormone are actually naturally occurring substances within our body, and they are secreted mostly while we sleep. And so in order to get the full benefit of that testosterone and growth hormone release, it's actually critically important that we are getting enough sleep, but more importantly, making sure that we're going to sleep at the right time. The research has shown that if you are getting into bed regularly before 10 o'clock at night, then you are going to get the maximum testosterone and growth hormone release during sleep. And the later that you go to bed after that, and the closer that you get to bed around 12 or after midnight regularly, the lower that testosterone and growth hormone release is, and the worse off your recovery is going to be. Testosterone is also one of the highest prescribed drugs by medical doctors to try and help their clients to live more healthy and with better longevity. But be very aware of this, because if you are an athlete that aspires for age group position or wants to be competitive in your sport, testosterone is a banned substance. You're far better off making sure that you're getting good quality sleep at the right time to maximize your own testosterone and growth hormone release. The main motivation for taking EPO is to increase the red blood cells in our blood. Now, the way that we can do that legally is to go and train at altitude for a couple of weeks. If you spend 2 weeks with high altitude exposure, that can increase your red blood cell carrying capacity of your blood for up to 12 weeks after you come down from altitude. It does have a little bit of a long tail, but what you can be very confident of is that you will have given yourself a really good endurance boost for up to 8 to 10 weeks. And as I said, that effect actually carries on for 12 weeks. So if you're very serious about endurance exercise and you can get up to altitude 2 to 3 times a year, you can get very similar benefits to what the elite athletes are getting from EPO. And finally, we have stimulants. Now, I've mentioned caffeine before, and that is the most readily available and legal stimulant that you can use, particularly for responders or caffeine sensitive athletes. If you're caffeine sensitive, it's really easy. You just want to take around 100 to 200 milligrams of caffeine during exercise, spread 3 to 4 hours apart. If you are not caffeine sensitive, you can still get the benefits of using caffeine. However, you need to then take yourself off caffeine and wean yourself off for 7 to 14 days. Beware that when you do that, you will get headaches, you will be cranky and moody, but that will allow you to then get the benefits of caffeine on race day. As another little asterisk, please experiment with caffeine before race day. By removing caffeine from your diet and then reintroducing it, number one, and number two, if you are not a regular caffeine user, it can stimulate your gastrointestinal tract, and then unfortunately you'll be sprinting to the bathroom instead of sprinting to the finish line.
Julians, I'm cranky if I don't have caffeine for one day.
Yeah, aren't we all, Dev? But the problem with doing all of this is really pointless if you aren't training properly in the first place. This video will give you the foundation to build on, and truthfully, if you don't do the second thing, then it's pointless trying anything we've just taught you.